Kia ora tātou. Hello friends, lots of family. I'm honoured to be here launching the latest book, the latest outstanding book written by my sister Mandy. New Zealand sometimes has some odd ideas about protest, or kind of inconsistent ideas. And some people think it's confused, some people think it's sort of disreputable or extreme, or maybe it's going a bit too far, or it's not like the proper politics done by politicians. But in this room, obviously you don't think that. As we know, protesters, and as you just heard, protesters helped to bring about many of the most important things, important changes, the best things that we have about our country. Mandy has written an intelligent and accessible book on the history of protest, and not only protest, but more broadly, sort of democratic political change in our country, showing how it is done, how much it has achieved, and encouraging us all to do more of it. The book covers a lot of ground. Starts with Maori land protest, workers' issues, women's and gay right protests, anti-war protests, environmental protests, and many more. It is packed with information for those who haven't seen it yet. I learned a lot. You will learn a lot. It's rich with stuff. As you read the book, you will start to notice that there are similarities between the different campaigns. Very different campaigns, but the same tactics. For instance, the suffragettes mobilising public opinion in very much the same way that later environmentalists will, and peace movement people will, in a different campaign. And so in a sense, this is a book about how political change happens. Have anyone heard anything? And so this is in part a book about how political change happens. And we know it, but let's just run through it. Political change happens because people speak up. They speak up not just once, but they keep speaking up, and they talk ideas into existence, and suddenly what seemed foreign becomes normal and then accepted and then embraced by many other people. That's the first thing that happens with political change. The next thing that happens in political change is mobilizing others, which is what a lot of this book is about. Where we all know that there are people, it's not just a few activists who care about things, all sorts of people care about things. The majority of people have the same values as we do, but they don't have any way to express it. And what the organisers do, what the protesters, campaigners do, is they give people a way to join in and to show their views as well. And by doing so, creating enough power to change things. It's also done by research. Political change is also done by building alliances, by taking not just people who care about your issue, but linking it together with all the people who that's not their main issue or their main part of their lives, but where they care in their own way too. And they join you, and by joining together it's stronger. And then it's also, political change happens by the complicated stage of dealing with the politicians and the bureaucrats and the kind of bureaucratic change which is needed to take things from being wished for goals through to being concrete, permanent change. Mandy cares about these issues, and she cares a lot about making progress on them. That's why she wrote the book, and that's why I think why it's such a good book. The book is a labour of love, and she's done a beautiful job with it. It's packed, as I said, with interesting stories and insights. It's got evocative illustrations, and as I've already said, I've kept turning the page and finding things I hadn't seen before, and I think you will find the same. You think you already know about it, you're wrong. And the book does various things. Nearly finished. It tells the history, yes. It also honours the people who don't usually get honoured. But probably the most important part of it is that it will act as a guide and an encouragement to the campaigners and protesters of the future. And we can all help on this. You know right where I'm going to probably. Books need promoting. If you share her mission, which I recognise nearly everyone in the room does, read the book. Tell other people about it. Don't assume you already know about this subject and you don't need to have a look. Try to get into schools. Do get into schools, I mean.
I'm on it.
And while you do that, please imagine that quiet, inconspicuous young person sitting in the corner of the school library, picking up this book and reading it, and the unpredictable, impossible to predict, impossible to know at that stage, effects that book might be having. Because this is about the mysterious but powerful effect that a book can have, where you don't know who's going to read it, you don't know where it goes, but it might just be one person who's reading it at any one moment, and it's changing their life. And that is what I believe this book will do. So Mandy, I am very proud of you as my sister, and I'm honoured to be launching your book.
Yay!
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Wait. Just drop the thing.
Just talk amongst yourselves. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Mandy Hager ahau. E noho ana ahau ki Raumati, ki te tonga, ki Kapiti. Thank you so much for being here. I feel really lucky to have so many people here, and I appreciate the effort that you've made to come. Thank you so much to Vic Books for hosting us here, and to Nicky and Chloe. I know that she tried really hard to be here, and I really appreciate her efforts to make that video, and we'll all have a listen to it later. I'm so grateful for your support. Thank you. I'm not going to read from the book. I've just written something that kind of talks about how I feel about it. So sorry. I'll try and be fast. When this book was first mooted, it was going to be a 48-page book for middle primary school. But as soon as I started writing, my passion for the subject and the desire to acknowledge as many important actions as possible, as comprehensively as possible, took over. And Jenny and Christine from One Tree House kindly indulged my desire to write something more substantial. This was no small decision. The financial implications for them were huge, especially when you factor in paying for design and images. And I'm humbled by their trust in me. Where are you, Jenny? Thank you so much. My hope is that this book will not only become a staple for upper secondary school students, but will also be read by those who have an interest in social justice, human rights, peace and environmental issues, and in the way our nation has been shaped by the people who live here. It's also a clarion call against complacency, a call to action at a time when the stakes could never be higher. I started this project in April last year, shortly after the first COVID lockdown. Like many others, this unsettling time and the impossibility of knowing what would happen moving forwards exacerbated all my anxieties for the future. It seemed to me this time marked a turning point, a line in the sand between the old world we all knew and the uncertainty of the future moving forwards. It was the year climate change shifted from being something out there in the future to a reality being felt by tens of thousands all over the world. It was the year we saw the fragility of democracy as the US imploded, and how the calculated stirring up of hatred, racism, misinformation and tension sadly overflowed from there to infect some in our own home. Hatred, white supremacism, xenophobia, greed, an ever-increasing gap between rich and poor, extinctions, loss of biodiversity, degraded waterways. Everywhere I looked, the news was not just bad, it was horrific. I sank very low, fearing for the future of my children and grandchildren, seeing no light ahead, only unimaginable struggle and the rising tide of death. This book has lifted me out of that hole. Every one of the 54 campaigns in here provide proof that change can be made, that right across our history, brave, dedicated citizens from the young, fingers aren't working, to the elderly have fought to protect our rights and to preserve our beautiful environment, supported and empowered those in need of it, called out gender discrimination and racism, risked violence, incarceration and death to champion peace, and raised their voices to ensure that government works for all people they're elected to serve, not merely to preserve the 1%'s power and wealth. The people featured in this book may not think of themselves as heroes, but they are. They're ordinary people who have done extraordinary things, and many of you are here. Thank you. From chopping down flagpoles or refusing to kill in war, to standing up for the rights of their people, saving places of outstanding natural beauty, striking for fairer conditions, or skipping school in order to raise the alarm and wake up sleepwalking adults to the catastrophe knocking at our collective door. In my mind, this book is a tribute to them all, and to every other Kiwi who has put up their hands and raised their voice to create just change. If you're one of these people here tonight, thank you very much. We are forever in your debt. What I hope you'll take away from this book, besides an insight into our history and how protesters shaped it, is a sense of inspiration. It is possible to make significant change if needed. As we enter increasingly uncertain times, it's easy to feel helpless. But all it takes is one person with a voice to ignite the first spark, and others will be drawn to it if the cause is good. Together we can be, as Gandhi said, the change we wish to see in the world. Together we can ignite hope. My thanks to One Tree House publishers, Christine Dale and Jenny Nagel, for making this book possible, and for Visanti Unka for her amazing book design. Thanks to Creative New Zealand for funding support. Thank you too to the many kind people who have contributed their time and resources. Paul Benseman, for allowing me to quote from his beautiful book, Fight for the Forests. Please read it, it's amazing. And for fact checking. Dean Bajent Mercer, for an excerpt from his description of the Timberlands protests. John Handlin, for his kind permission to quote the lyrics of his song, Damn the Dam in full. Dennis Tegg of Coromandel Watchdog, Tim Jones of the Save Aramoana campaign, Cindy Baxter, Tara Ford and Frances Montier for fact-checking and images from the Save Happy Valley campaign, Tanya Roxburgh, who has just won Book of the Year for her amazing novel, give her a clap, for checking the section on Bastion Point, which she's also written about, Paulina Sadowska and Malibu Hamilton from Kiwis Against Seabed Mining, photographer John McComb for kindly searching through his files to find the photos of treetop protests and granting me permission to use them. Te Maringa Hohia, who in 2005 walked me through the story of Parihaka. Amnesty UK, Kit Wilson, Generation Zero, Greenpeace, Ira Bailey, Phil Braithwaite, Coal Action Network, Scoop, Indomedia, Tom Scott, Eric Heath, Wellington Rape Crisis, Bill Logan, Dylan Owen, Sharon Murdoch, New Zealand Labour Party. Sorry, there's a lot of people to thank. Amnesty Aroha and Mark Hurwitz, a US-based cartoonist, for their kind permissions to use images. To my brother Nicky, thank you for all your fact-checking and support, and for all the incredible work you've done to uphold human rights, champion peace, and protect the environment. I and our whole family are so incredibly proud of you.
Yay!
He's my brother. I do want to acknowledge the great wealth of information available on the New Zealand History website, produced by History Group of the New Zealand Ministry for Culture and Heritage, and Te Ara, the Encyclopedia of New Zealand. These resources have formed much of the backbone of this book. My heartfelt thanks to my family and friends who buoyed me up during those dark months and reminded me that their love and support is the cornerstone of my life and the thing that gives it meaning. Finally, once again, I'd like to thank every Kiwi who is engaged in our democratic process by speaking out and taking action when they saw something they believed was wrong. Your contribution to improving the lives of fellow Kiwis and the land we live in will not be forgotten. And now, more than any other time in human history, we need to learn from your examples and put aside personal comfort to demand a just and immediate transition away from fossil fuels and other polluting practices to protect our planet and all life forms that rely on it. So grab your banners, put on your marching boots, and raise your voices. There is no other sane and ethical choice. Ngā mihi, thank you for coming.